So welcome to this episode of In Conversation with Reason to Be. My name is Aurea Fellows and I'm joined as usual by my colleague Keith Goddard. This is the third of a series of short podcasts that we've been doing on healthy habits to support sleep. So even when we've sort of got into really good habits, perhaps during the course of the day and in the lead up to bedtime, and our sort of routines are feeling quite kind of helpful, there still can be times when sleep, I certainly know this is true for me, can still be a bit elusive at times. So when that happens, Keith, what kind of things have we got in the toolkit that we could offer up when we're finding it difficult to fall asleep?
I think one of the things to say is through this is to find something that works for you, which means you'll have to practice some of these things. But one of the places I start with people is a technique called progressive muscle relaxation. And it's a technique which basically reduces stress and anxiety in our body. So there's an aspect of physicality of where do you hold your stress. But also, actually, for people that are more physical based, it tunes straight into that need to be physically engaged with yourself. So the technique really is laying on your back in bed, getting relaxed. So this is using your breathing to get yourself in a comfortable and relaxed position. And then what you're basically doing is working from your toes up. In essence, you're just physically tensing your toes and the balls, arches of your feet for around about 5 seconds. And you're focusing on how that tension feels. Using your breathing as well. And then what you're doing is then relaxing. And the key thing is focusing on what the sensation of relaxation is like for you. And then all you're doing is you're working up your body, so heels, calves, etc. So gradually tense, focus on how it feels, relax, focus on how that feels, gradually work up. In the sense, the physicality of tensing, holding and relaxing is both physically relaxing, but actually, because you're having to concentrate on doing it, it's mindful as well. And that's also a distraction technique. So PMR is a whole host of things that sort of helps you to get in a more sleepy mode. I think the most attention is on the releasing bit, because that's where you get the best effect in terms of sensation. Don't strain. Actually, it's a tensing. Obviously, be cautious of any physical injuries that you've got in your body. The key thing is practice, as always. And as I say, that it works particularly well for those that are physically attuned and like that sensation, I guess. Yeah.
So Keith, one of the things that I found helpful and I've talked to individuals about is the sort of methodology. It's called a body scan, which sounds like there's a lot of similarity. So with body scanning, you obviously, like you were describing there, you start by bringing attention to your breath, and then you move from that and you move through the body. It doesn't have to be in a particularly structured or systematic way, but paying attention and just noticing how different parts of the body are feeling, just detecting whatever sensation is there, with a very kind of just curious and open mindset around how things feel, and just very consciously bringing your attention to that, and keeping coming back to that if it wanders off. So they sound like they're very similar in terms of approaches. So would you say that they achieve the same result, or are there reasons that you might choose one methodology over the other?
Good question, Aurea. I think it's useful for people to have both in their toolkit. So that's the first thing to say. So like everything, have a couple of tools that you can use, because PMR might work for you a lot of the time, but one evening it might not. So you might want to switch to body scanning or vice versa. The tuning to different systems, but the effect is the same. I think the core similarity is about they're both getting you to be mindful of something. I think the body scanning is more actually imagery based and being purely in the moment with how you sense your body, where there's an actual physical act within PMR. So actually, depending on where your preference of mode is, if that's the right expression, will depend on which one lands. Some people actually find body scanning doesn't switch them off enough. They get too many intrusive thoughts, where actually layering on a physical aspect to it actually just intensifies them being in the moment. So there's a little bit about just actually PMR for some people crowds out intrusive thoughts a little bit more. Equally, some people find that physicality too intrusive. So part of it is practicing both, getting used to it. Personally, I find body scanning more relaxing psychologically, but actually, I think for me, PMR is a really good way to physically relax. So I think one of the things to think about for people is with PMR is some people carry anxiety in certain parts of the body physically. So it could be in the back, mid-back, shoulders. It could be in the legs. So once you get used to using PMR, what you'll find is where you hold that physical tension, and you can use PMR in a very focused way. So you don't need to just do top to bottom. You can just do your shoulders, for example, where body scanning actually just gets you into in tune with your whole being, I guess. And sometimes body scanning you use with things like Headspace, Smiling Minds and Calm, and sort of mindfulness programs and stuff.
So both very different sort of types of mindfulness, but both helping to achieve the same end is kind of where we're summarising that. And so what other mindfulness type approaches might you be also suggesting? So say neither of those really chime with someone. What else could you throw in the mix for somebody to have a go with?
Well, I'm a fan of smiling.
We know that, Keith.
I have to say, for those that know me, I haven't got a naturally smiley face. I smile inside. But just the physical act of smiling in bed. So actually, and it becomes a bit of a habit for me because I don't find difficulty getting to sleep. But if I've had a quite intensive day or something on the mind, I actually physically smile and smile out loud to myself as I'm going to sleep. And actually, I'm mindful of smiling, if that doesn't sound too strange. So both in terms of how it feels physically on my face, but also the sensation, the emotional feelings I get as a result of doing that. So there's things like that you can do. Some people actually are just mindful of how their body feels in bed. So a technique I learned many, many years ago is feeling tuning into how it feels to be in the mattress and actually trying to sink yourself visually into the mattress. And actually that gets you the relax, but actually the mindfulness bit is being in the moment with that and wholly absorbed with it. So a couple of sort of physical but psychological techniques that you can do quite quickly and quite easily.
And I'm quite surprised, Keith, that you, being such a fan of breathing, you've not mentioned breathing, because I know that for me, being sort of having a mindfulness of breath, is a cornerstone of one of the things that helps me to start to be able to fall asleep if I'm finding it difficult. And sometimes combining that with other things. So if I've got a real racing mind, I find it hard to switch off. Sometimes the mindfulness of breath just isn't enough on its own. So adding in, focusing in my head, saying, in and out, or counting, or visualizing the kind of breath in some way as waves on a beach, or, something which actually sort of layers on a number of things, depending on how distractible and how easy my mind is going back to the thing that it wants to sort of fret about. So I think what we're saying is lots of different possibilities, different ways you can combine things. Got to find out what works for you and give those things a try, and get practiced at them for when you need them. But how about if none of that is working, so I'm still lying in bed awake, it's really not happening for me, what would you be doing then, Keith?
So you're trying to sleep by the sounds of it, Aurea.
Oh yeah, I'm really trying.
We laugh about that, but it's interesting when you talk to people about when they can't get to sleep. They're trying desperately to get to sleep, and that becomes a little bit sort of obsessive with them. And the trying to get to sleep then actually, interesting enough, prevents them getting to sleep. So I'll just throw that out there, really. I guess, I'm going to mention something that's really counterintuitive So people are going to look at it and go, what are you talking about, Keith? So I think what we call the 15-minute rule works. So one is getting a sense of how long have you been not being able to get to sleep, and therefore trying to get to sleep. And I think there's a blend into that, not being able to get to sleep and then trying to get to sleep. But I think having a bit of sense of, so how long's that been? You need to get your own time limit with this, but round about 15 or 20 minutes, if you're still not asleep, you need to do something quite radical. And that radical is get up, get out of bed. So that's the 15-minute rule, really, because that breaks the cycle, it breaks the environment, and it allows you to reset. But you've got to have something to go to. So this comes back to some of your preparation. If you know you're having trouble sleeping and you're going to do the 15-minute rule, you need to have established a sleepy environment. So you know where you're going to go to in your house, in your home, quiet corner, subdued lighting, have a trashy book. So no stimulation when you're trying to get back to sleep, when you've got out of bed. Something that will send you to sleep. Breathing, you've mentioned, so nice breathing exercises, nice warm drink that's not caffeinated, some subdued music. All of those things, what you're trying to do is get back to a sleepy mood. And then once you're in that sleepy mood, is returning back to bed. And then again, 15, 20 minutes, if you're still not asleep, you get back up again. And actually, this needs to be a discipline. It's really counterintuitive, but actually it is way more effective than staying in bed for 2 or 3 hours trying to sleep. Some people will get up and use Headspace, Calm, Smiling Man's apps to do a bit of mindfulness. But the key thing is discipline, 15, 20 minutes, not asleep, get up, go to your sleepy place, try and get back to sleepy mode, back to bed, and repeat.
So even if we're finding it difficult to fall asleep, there are still, some habits we can get into, some practices that we can get a bit more skillful at, so that we not just trying then in the moment, we're actually got something we can draw on. And if we know that staying asleep and waking up in the night is problematic, then having those things ready to go sounds like things that will be really supportive. So we hope you again found it helpful just to sort of join us in a conversation around things that can help you to get a good night's sleep once you're physically in bed. This is the third in the series, so there are also podcasts around things you can do during the day and as in the run up to bed, if you're interested in those as well. But we thank you very much for joining us. We hope you found it useful, and we hope to see you again sometime soon.